The first part of it is that one is happy that the trajectory is moved to a higher level from the second quarter to the third quarter. And the other interesting and happy note is the fact that agriculture usually grows a lot higher or highest in the fourth quarter because of the seasonal nature of agriculture in Nigeria. Having said that, one, however, cannot run away from the fact that this growth should have been a lot more than what it is. Because if you look at the overall growth, you look at the rates of deliveries, of child delivery in Nigeria, 3% versus, it's rather difficult for you to see the size of the growth. But the other good part again is the fact that this growth, looking at it in the agricultural sector, is a growth that creates jobs. It's a growth that addresses the poor people in the villages. You know, unlike the growth in the oil sector. The growth in the oil sector does not really create jobs per se, but in agriculture. So those figures themselves don't tell the full story. To tell the full story is to really drill down and say, what is the analysis of this?
Okay, because I really think it's quite an impressive result, bearing the challenges, especially in the quarter. We saw the floods, we saw a lot of security issues in there. Can you speak to this point?
Yeah, certainly. The agricultural sector in Nigeria should be commended for its effort, despite all these. You also have the herdsmen issue, the Boko Haram issue, and then the flood that came as well. But on top of that was the fact that this kind of support that should have come from the federal and state governments did not come. Even the budget itself was approved very late in the year. In fact, the budget cannot be said, as far as agriculture is concerned, cannot be said it's for 2018, can only be seen as being used for 2019 because agriculture is time sensitive. Now, those issues that we're looking at, you've not even mentioned the fact that the past 3 months has seen a downturn in the availability of electricity. The roads, because of the rainy season, have gone worse. So the logistics and transportation of foodstuff from the north to the south has become a lot more difficult and a lot more destroyed. So when you put all these negative issues together, and we still able to have this positive growth in agriculture, I think it's the agricultural sector needs to be commended quite a lot. But 2019 has a great opportunity for us. Okay, great opportunity for 2019.
Yes. But when you look at all the sectors that make up this, the segments that make up this sector, we're looking at crop production, we're looking at livestock, we're looking at forestry, and we're looking at fishery. Well, crop production always takes the bait. What do you think were the key highlights, especially in this quarter?
The crop production could have done a lot more if they were given the kind of seeds they required. Because see, people don't really appreciate the different seeds, good seeds make to the yield. The fact that if the seeds itself, giving them a good seed, increases their production by at least 500%. But if you use the same grains you used last year, you don't get there. The other issue is the fact that the ones that are driven more by the private sector, like now the fisheries, the livestock, they have grown. They did a lot. They did very well in the third quarter of this year, but they have a better potential because the second and third quarters were not very good for livestock because of the problems that you had between the herdsmen and the farmers. But looking forward into the future, we see a situation where 2019, we're not bothered too much about the politics as long as it's peaceful. Everything will turn out very well because a lot of groundwork has been put in place and farmers are now better structured than they were before.
Okay, when you look at least these segments, you know, what would you, I'd like you to speak to our food security strategy.
Oh, okay. The food security strategy in this country, quite honestly, doesn't really exist. The reason for that is because you need to produce excess and be able to preserve the excess for you to have food security. Food security means that at the time when you're not producing, you have enough to eat because people eat every day regardless of when the crops are harvested. We don't have that. The silos themselves or the various strategic reserves we have in the country, the silos are empty. As of today, they are empty. And until we come up with a policy that hands these things over to the private sector and let the private sector run it, it's one of the reasons why you're not having enough investment in the agricultural sector. The value chain has this problem, too much concentration on actual production and less on the logistics, preservation, and storage. We don't have that. We don't have refrigeration in the world. Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world. Example is the fact, even in Africa, Egypt has 3 million refrigerated space. South Africa has 1.7. Namibia has about 750,000 cubic meters of refrigerated space. Nigeria has less than 50,000 with our population.
Beyond storage and that, now I'd like to look at the the other aspect, getting foreign exchange from through exports.
Yes.
When you look at how we are positioned, how best do you think we can improve our capacity for exports?
The first thing is that the moment you think about export, you must remember competition. You're not the only country. Therefore, you must remember also that you don't determine the quality of what you export. The consumer or the buyer or the off-taker is the one that determines it. We have not gotten to that stage because of all these problems we have. I give an example, talking about export, even exporting our own premises. Many of the ships that come to Nigeria, Nigeria is the biggest shipping port in Africa. The number of ships that come here because of the size of our economy. They leave this country to go to the Republic of Benin or Ghana ports to go and buy food for their crew. It's as bad as that. That's the situation. DHL planes comes here every day. They fly out empty. These are issues. So when we start talking about export, it's a very beautiful word. But getting to where we are supposed to be, we've not even started the journey. Because there's no real convergence between the private sector who want to export and the government agencies who are the regulators. It appears that some of us in the private sector feel that there's a deliberate policy to make life impossible for those who wish to export. So there are so many problems and challenges, and unless we are able to come together, private sector, public sector, sitting together and saying, in the best interest of Nigeria's economy and providing jobs for Nigerians, let us sit down and do the right things.
So more cohesion between the agencies.
Certainly.
Thank you so much for your time.